Hi, everybody. Welcome back to With Bowl and Spoon, a podcast about food, community, and how our personal relationships with food grow and evolve over time. I like to call that our personal food evolution. I am your host, Shelly Danko Day. Today, my guest is Jamie Moore, Director of Sourcing and Sustainability at Eaton Park Hospitality Group. Jamie started cooking at an early age, growing up in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. As a kid, he used to make omelets for his neighbors after church. He did a tour in the Navy that had him cooking and baking on ships in the Caribbean and the Mediterranean. And this is where he discovered baklava, octopus, and pomegranate, with each new location adding another layer of flavor and perspective. We talk about the role of distributors in local sourcing, local tofu, and the real math behind chicken dinners. Jamie's Know Your Source program at Eaton Park is proof that connecting chefs with local growers is possible if you've got the commitment and curiosity to do it. Hope you enjoy our talk. Welcome to With Bowl and Spoon. I am so excited to be here with my guest today, Jamie Moore from Eaton Park Hospitality Group. Why don't you go ahead and tell people what you do, Jamie, because you have a very unique job.
Sure. I've been with this company, believe it or not, for 25 years. I'm celebrating 25 years this year, which is really a milestone within the folds of our company. We've got about 800 and some employees that have met a 25-year commitment with the company. And I think we've got 10 or 12 that are still working at the 50-year mark. So pretty long-standing relationship here. My job is primarily responsible for building our supply chain in the markets that we move into. So our company, Parkhurst and Eaton Park, so Eaton Park restaurants, are hopefully you all know who Eaton Park is, but Eaton Park restaurants are family-owned restaurants, and we spread from I'd say Pennsylvania through a little bit into the West Virginia area, and that's pretty much our market. We go as far as Altoona with that brand, and we do a little bit into the Ohio market as well. I think we got one or two in the Ohio market.
And that's the Eaton Park restaurants.
That is the Eaton Park restaurants.
Dinery kind of restaurants that everybody knows about. Yeah.
Yep. And then we also have Hello Bistro, and then we also have The Porch, and then we have a division called Parkhurst, and that's pretty much where I am responsible for a lot of their sourcing and sustainability initiatives that might happen at some of our college campuses or our corporate dining accounts. I'm there to build that rapport, build that relationship with that local grower or that dairy or whomever that we might be partnering with in a new geography, and existing geography for that matter.
So you don't source for the restaurants specifically?
I certainly do, but I mean that supply chain is pretty much built. We've been dealing with a lot of the same farms for many years. We have, Turner Dairy obviously is a big part of our fluid milk. We purchase our bread from Saloni's. So a lot of those partnerships are tried and true, and they've been there for quite some time, and those are sort of going along with emotions. Eaton Park purchases about 21% of their food within the community. Parkhurst is about 22.7% at this point in time as of today.
Wow.
Throughout the whole entire footprint of the company. So our real commitment is about 20% is what we strive to hit, and we've exceeded that.
That's fantastic.
We do it by period, so we're on a 13-period year with our company, and period after period, depending, like right now, obviously I don't have any colleges that are in session, so those college numbers are, I wouldn't say that they're plummeting to nothing, because they're still buying milk and they're still buying other things for camps and whatnot. But all in all, I mean, I think that over the course of the year, and that's what the year-to-date number is, 22.7% right now is where Parkhurst is at.
Well, that is impressive, because one of the things that I always say is 10% would make a huge difference. If everybody just shifted 10% of their household budget towards local stuff, it would make a huge difference for the local food economy. I met you when I was in grad school at Chatham University. I was the first cohort there, and we all were like, oh my God, you have a dream job. You have the dream food studies job. You were traveling. I remember hearing about your trip to Alaska and some other like really amazing trips that you did to make sure that things were sourced properly. We were like, that is a really good excuse to travel.
But I certainly have done the coffee. I wish I would have done Alaska. That would have been fun. We were supposed to train.
Oh, you didn't go to Alaska?
No.
You were
trying to work on something to go up to see our fisheries, to see where our cod was caught, but we never ended up doing that. But I have been to Costa Rica. So a lot of my job is to, there's a lot of noise in the food system. And, my goal is to make sure that I understand both sides of the coin. If we are conventional raised eggs versus cage-free, what is the difference? And understanding both sides is important. We are committed to a lot of different things within food safety as well as within a humane treatment of animals, but we also have to look at our bottom line in a lot of things. Parkhurst is really moving quite well with, or the partners that we're working with. We have a heightened level of not food safety, but more of that humane treatment. A lot of our eggs are American Humane Certified, coming out of Crider Farms out of Lancaster. I'd say about 80% of our shelled eggs are coming from that market. A lot of our pork is coming out of Clemens Food Group out of the Philadelphia area, where they are certified by their own entity, which is Where Food Comes From. It's actually a third party that Where Food Comes From, they inspect for them for their animal welfare practices. So we're always looking at ways that we can work with partners that have a third-party verification system in place to ensure that it's not me saying it; it's coming directly from the company that we're buying from. A lot of people don't know, like Butterball Turkey, American Humane Certified, another certification that is done through a third party that will allow us to be able to say we can promote that. So we're starting to see trends that are happening, at least within a student, within some of our colleges. That they're moving more towards understanding, we want to make sure that the food that we're eating is humanely raised. And we're starting to see that a little bit more of an uptick.
More people are becoming aware of the food system.
Yeah, I would say so. Especially if someone wants to, if I want to eat a piece of chicken, I want to make sure that it's humanely raised.
Yeah.
And I think that we're starting to see a little bit more of an uptick, or at least a knowledge they want to know.
Yeah. So how did you end up here? How did you become the sustainability guy for Eaton Park?
Well, it was an interesting evolution. I started here as the manager of purchasing. We had 13 locations under Parkhurst. We have 87, 86 right now. So Parkhurst was a division of the company, and they had a focus that they wanted to understand. We were feeding college students, and we started to get a little bit of noise of, hey, where's that apple coming from? Or where's that chicken coming from? And, someone needed to start to communicate that outward to our students. You got to remember, this was 2001. So 2002 is when I initiated a program called Farm Source. And Farm Source was a way that we could promote the local products that we were procuring or that we were using inside of our operations. So Farm Source really concentrated on the farms, and strictly the farms. And that Farm Source program has evolved into a program that really is our food philosophy within our own company, called Know Your Source, of knowing the source of our supply. It makes it pretty simple, right? But Know Your Source, there's two different categories. One is Farm Source, which is the farms, fisheries, dairies, meat. Those all fall under Farm Source. And then there's Forage Partners. So Forage Partners are makers, people making salsa, people making sauerkraut, people making, cookies or whatever else may end up falling under that Forage Partner. Someone doing artisan bread, someone doing coffee, that would fall under a Forage Partner. And then the last category that we end up having is a local scene. And local scene is really bringing a restaurant partner into the folds of our colleges. So if you can envision a food court, and we might be operating a taco stand, and we might be operating a sub or a deli concept, and then over to the right we might have Millie's Ice Cream, or we might have an outside partner like Salem's, and having them do traditional Mediterranean cuisine versus us trying to execute something that we may not be able to do as well as them. So really working closely with the whole community of the food system, not just produce, because produce, to be very honest, is a small number when you start looking at that 20%. It's probably around the 2% mark of what we're really buying produce-wise. I'd love to say it's more, but it's reality.
So all of those products, like the sauerkraut and stuff, is that just for the Parkhurst dining facilities?
No, I think there's some overlap that come into
Okay.
our restaurants. Eaton Park does a really good job of supporting the local community, but if we're not buying sauerkraut, but we make a lot of stuff in our restaurants that is from scratch. We're still making our coleslaw in-house. We're breading our own fish in-house. So we're doing a lot of the execution of a lot of the things that you might see in some of the fast casual restaurants that have opted to go buy a frozen product in lieu of making it something fresh. We still have that philosophy within Eaton Park, and we still have that philosophy certainly within Parkhurst. So it's more of looking at what we don't want to add more complexity in our kitchen, so we're always cautious about that. But we also are aware of our surroundings, of people or companies that might be able to help us along. Like a good example is so really working with fifth generation baking, and within Eaton Park, we recognize that there's local partners that we can work with. And one of the things that we ended up knowing that we could not make in-house was our sticky buns. And we worked closely with some local partners, fifth generation baking, to establish a product that we could put back out onto our menu. After COVID, we had some companies that we were working with in the past that just weren't able to survive. So we needed to find someone that could do that. It was a grilled sticky. It wasn't a cinnamon roll. It was a grilled sticky. So we were able to put the grilled sticky back on our menu because of fifth generation. And that's really a commitment to knowing what's available in the marketplace and who we want to partner with. And and fifth generation, family owned, still falling into the same folds of what we concentrate on for our Know Your Source. So another thing I want to sort of include is that Know Your Source is all family and independently owned businesses. We recognize that McCormick Spices is out of Baltimore, but they're not in our folds of our company because they're not a family-owned company. So, when we built our definition and we really looked at, who we are as a company, being that we're a family and independently owned operator, we needed to also do that with the companies that we were trying to bring into our Know Your Source program. So part of that definition is family and independently owned and within our company footprint. So our company footprint right now is about 15 states. But that doesn't mean that, in Pittsburgh, we're going to be buying a bunch of stuff from Portland, Maine. Still probably I'd say about a good 90% of our products are still generated within 200-mile radius of Pittsburgh.
One thing that I really appreciated, we were coming across the state we were coming back from a funeral or something, and we stopped at an Eaton Park, like in the middle of the state somewhere, and on the salad bar there was local tomatoes. They were heirloom, tasty tomatoes, and I was like, whoa. It was August, September-ish, and I was like, you get local tomatoes? And the girl was like, yeah, we get it from this farm, blah, blah, blah. And then she was talking about the other produce. And I'm like, this is fantastic. So each of the restaurants, there's that ability, I guess, to be able to source super locally.
Well, it has a lot to do with our commitment and our partnerships that we have with our produce distributors. So, when we initially started our Farm Source program way back when, back in 2000, let's go back to 2002. There was an Amish farm that came to me, and I was at a conference with an organization called the Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Ag, PASA, as some people may not know. I had a booth there, and I was cooking potatoes and mushrooms, And the aroma just brought people over to my booth. And I had a big sign.
Get some butter and yeah.
Oh, butter, onions, some thyme, and I had it was all local ingredients. Everything was local. And I'm cooking, and and this was really in myself promoting Eaton Park. I was trying to get growers that could grow for us and supply our produce distributor with local produce. So that was my goal. My goal was there just to make noise, get an aroma going, and start talking to people. And I had
brings them in for sure.
Oh yeah, and it pulled them in. And I had an Amish farmer come over to me. His name was Aaron Schwartz, and he said, "Jamie, I'd love to start growing for Eaton Park. What do I need to do?" I said, "Well, let's see what we can make this happen." So about a month later, I get a phone call from Aaron, and he says, "Hey, I'm going to come down to Pittsburgh, and I'd like to visit with you." I said, "Okay." So this is February. This is probably March now. He comes down in March, and he goes, "I want to tell you that my family right now, we are going to either survive this year, or I'm going to move my whole entire family to Indiana, and I'm going to start doing woodworking with my brother. I'm not able to make ends meet, and I'd love to be able to see what we can do with Eaton Park." I said, "All right, Aaron, I'm going to take and work with you and see if we can get someone to pick up your produce and bring it back to the distribution facility, and it can be distributed into our restaurants." So within that year, I was able to buy and support Aaron and his family of buying almost 150 cases a week of just zucchini alone, yellow squash, zucchini. But I basically took and bought just about every product that he was able to generate. His product was beautiful. And at the end of the growing season, Aaron invited me to his farm, and he says, "Jamie, I want to show you what I'm doing." And he built a loading dock because he got tired of bending up and down to be able to load the truck that was coming from Paragon that was delivering and picking up produce from his farm and driving it down to the distribution center in Pittsburgh and then distributing it to our locations. So this one little relationship turned into something that he welcomed me to his home because he wanted to celebrate with me the excitement of the relationship, really a relationship that was just a simple conversation, and then myself following through with what I said I was going to do, and I said I was going to buy everything from him, and I did. And he now, as a certified organic grower, owns Clarion River Organics, and doesn't own because he's Amish, he doesn't own it. But he's the founder of Clarion River Organics, and he's no longer someone that wants to sell to me, but he sells to Whole Foods and many other places. He's someone that is a testament to our program and how well it worked for a small producer, and gave him, he's still in Sligo, Pennsylvania, outside of the Clarion area, still living there, still doing all the things he was doing. His kids now are farming instead of him. I think he's retired. But he's a wonderful example of how our Farm Source program kept his family in farming versus moving into woodworking. Still today, I still think of him, and if I do ever run into him again, which I'm sure I will, I would imagine we would be able to be at the same level as what we were when we were originally working together. That friendship, I don't think, will ever go away. So he was just a really close friend, and we just built a nice relationship through a partnership through work. So
you mentioned that you utilized a distribution system.
Oh yeah, yes.
And a lot of people think like, oh, if you get food from a distributor versus getting it from direct from the farmer, then that's a problem. But you're using a third party.
Well, we already have a produce distributor going into our locations every day, or not every day, but at least 3 days a week. So it made most sense, especially for Eaton Park, to move. I can get this farm to deliver directly to the distributor. In the case of Aaron, he didn't have a vehicle. There was no way he was going to be able to deliver to any of the locations for that matter. But we could at least get a truck to be able to pick up at his farm and drive it back to Pittsburgh and ultimately to our locations. Now, does that sound like it's a crazy model? Yeah, I guess. But in the end, that's the model that we've gone with for many, many years. And, when we find a product, I'm working on potatoes, apples, and tofu right now for every one of our Parkhurst locations, that we are committed to having those three items from local sources at every one of our colleges. Because potatoes, they're a year-round crop. The potato that you're eating today was harvested in October. And this is July, so it is a cold storage crop that can store for many years, not years, many months. Probably we're at the last of potatoes from last year. We now have new potatoes coming in, and the apples are the same. I can put them in a cold storage environment or a controlled atmosphere, and I can hold those potatoes from the time that they're harvested in September and October the whole way through March or June. And that's the time that we have a lot of our colleges in session. So my goal is to have those two types of products every day, always coming from the same farms, all going through our same points of distribution that they're buying their bananas and everything else from.
Well, and just so everybody knows, like, those products are also being stored. Like, if you see apples at the farmer's market now, they're not from this year, they're from last year.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a legitimate way of extending the life of a product, or of storing those products.
Yes.
And people have done that for many, many years.
Many years. I mean, your butternut squash falls in the same. Your onions are falling into the same. There's a lot of cold storage that we have that we rely on for crops that can be grown locally, and we can sustain them for a long period of time.
They are in season, like at the end of the year, like
yes,
in the
right.
fall, but you can extend that to feed you through the winter. That was a practical way of doing it. But my point of using a distributor, and it sounds like that's a really practical thing, because your Amish friend would have to drive around to all of the different locations. That doesn't make sense.
No.
So taking it to a central location that's already making that drive. And I think it's just because you're using a distributor and you're utilizing Paragon, which is kind of famous for working with a lot of local farms and helping them to distribute on the local
I think
basis.
A lot of that with Paragon, we were growing at the same time our farm source program as Paragon was trying to focus on local as well. So we had a nice relationship because we were working on the same thing. I'd introduce a new farm to them and they'd go, "Oh, this is perfect. Let's start buying from them."
Yeah.
Yarnick's farm is a good example, and there's a handful of others that we've worked together with to say, "Hey, we want this product and we want this to go into our restaurants." And we want this to go into Parkhurst, and that was an easy one to manipulate locally. But as Parkhurst starts to grow into these other markets, those relationships are not as strong as they are here locally in the Pittsburgh market. But I'm working on that. Like I said, I'm working on these potatoes and I'm working on these apple farms, and I'm taking our operators into these locations so they can see and meet the guy that's growing the potatoes or the woman that's growing the apples. We can now build that personal relationship with that grower, that when we go to them and say, "Hey, we got the college students coming back and we'd love to have you table at one of our accounts." And now I've built a relationship with them. Instead of it going, "Well, who is this guy calling me? We've been to your farm." I mean, how many people can say that we've been to your operation?
Yeah.
And the chef's been there, and the general manager's been there, and the sourcing and sustainability director's been there. So it's more of building that relationship, and I think that is really what we have. I shouldn't say figured out, but that's been our way to not our way, sort of our philosophy of how we go to market. Parkhurst builds personal relationships not only with our colleges and our clients, but we also do that through our supply chain. So we have personal relationships that we build in a lot of different markets.
So you've been doing that and building those relationships and creating that partnership with other local producers and people interested in local foods since 2002. But prior to that, so it's a two-part question. So what did you do before that, and how did you, do you have a background in food and food systems, or was it something that you just kind of learned as you went along?
Well,
talk about that.
I mean, I think that my, I'll go back probably at an early age. Food was always part of my life. Ever since I've been 9 years old, I was always cooking. I'd cook omelets for my neighborhood, and I'd have a line of people.
So you had your own little Eaton Park at home.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I would have a line of people outside my door waiting for my omelets, and I would have a little cast iron skillet. I'd make my omelets, and My mom would be toasting bread, and we fed a handful of neighbors.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Greensburg. Yeah, and then when I left,
did you have a name for your operation?
I didn't. It was just something I did on Sundays. Did it after church, and I'd start making omelets. I don't know. It was just something I did.
Did you charge people for it, or was it free?
I don't think we charged, and I look back and I go, why didn't we charge?
Where'd you get the eggs?
Probably not local at that point in time. That would have been 1979, so it would have been a long time ago. And I don't think local was a commitment back then.
I bet not a lot of neighbors had chickens. That was probably the time before home chicken.
Well, it was in a suburb of Greensburg, and it was I was still in the country, but it was definitely not. I don't think anyone in my neighborhood raised chickens.
Yeah, that line had been drawn between the rural and now we're a little more sophisticated in our.
Yeah.
We buy all our food. Yeah.
Yes, right. With TV dinners, right? That's when they were coming out.
So you made omelets.
Yes, I made omelets.
And gave them away.
And I guess we gave them away. I don't remember making any money unless someone slid money to my mother to buy more eggs, because we used to go through a lot of eggs. But it was that like I said, food was always part of my life, and I cooked with my grandmother at a very young age. Sunday was our day of cooking, and we would make our Sunday spaghetti sauce and pasta sauce. She always put whatever was left over in the fridge, from chicken to sausage to beef or whatever else was there. It went into the Sunday sauce, and I learned that really at a young age, how to make a really good sauce and how to do I made gnocchi, and I made ravioli, and I made homemade pasta. I grew up in an Italian family. My grandmother was from Jeanette, and just always was in the kitchen with her. I never watched football on Sundays. My brothers and everyone else would be in the living room watching football, and I was in the kitchen cooking with Grandma. So I was just always in the kitchen. And then I went to the military. I cooked in the Navy. I was a Navy baker. I was the captain's personal cook, and then I ran the galley my last year. That was 22. So I moved through the ranks very quickly within the military. Came out of the military and went to Penn State.
So the better you cook, the higher your rank?
No,
it didn't contribute to it.
You had to pass exams. It was more passing exams,
Gotcha.
Just like your performance appraisal, right? I get a PPA, but I have to write a goal, and I get measured on how well I do on that goal. Same thing in the military.
And you had goals around cooking
mine was
being
mine was
efficient?
around food. Mine was around where I wanted to take my career within the Navy. Navy's only 4 years. It's not like I was there for that long period of time. I just was able to advance quickly just because I was a go-getter. I was someone that just didn't let the grass grow under my feet. When there was an initiative, there was something that was out there to say, hey, do you want to do this? I was a cook, and I was also I was the investigator for the fire party. So I was the one that was shutting off all the gas lines and all the all of the steam lines to make sure that we could shut down the ship if there was a fire. And that was my job. And I was also the cook. And it was just like, why is this guy a cook? But he's also involved in the fire party. So it was a role that I played, and I loved it. I mean, I was part of not only being in the kitchen, but I was also responsible for keeping the ship afloat if we ended up having a catastrophe. So that was a big deal. And
what kind of ship were you on?
I was on a guided missile cruiser out of Norfolk, Virginia, called the USS Biddle.
For all 4 years?
All 4 years, I was on one ship.
Did you ever go on submarines?
No, I was always out to sea. I mean, I was in Desert Shield and Desert Storm, so that was the first Iraqi war. I was, I think the longest deployment I had was about a 9-month deployment, usually either 3 months or 6 months. Mediterranean's usually a 6-month deployment, and then, what do they call it? The Caribbean is usually about a 3-month. In the Caribbean, you're usually doing drug ops, and then the Mediterranean's usually just you're visiting some beautiful places. But we were in the middle of a war, So for us, we sat in the middle of the Red Sea for months. It just sat and floated. So that was tough.
Did they bring food in with a helicopter or something?
They had ships that come beside you,
Ships.
and then there would be another ship, and you sort of cross, basically transfer ship from a tender over to our ship, usually through a thing of pulleys and lines that would connect both of the ships, which was a really interesting thing when you see it.
Did those locations, like in the Caribbean and the Mediterranean, did that influence your menu planning or anything like that?
Yes and no. I mean, I remember the first time that I had I pulled into Greece, and we were in, I don't remember, Sardinia. I guess that would have been Italy. We were in Greece. We were in Thessaloniki, Greece, Thessaloniki, and we pull in and we get this tray that comes to our. It's a box, this huge box. It's as big as a sheet pan, and it's got this like flaky dough. And I'm looking at it, what the hell is this? And it was my first time that I've ever had baklava. And I was blown away with baklava. I was like, how the hell did they make that? And I was the baker at the time. So I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. Well, my baklava did not turn out because it was just a whole entire process. And this was the age before the internet. So my goal, the only way that I was able to pull up information was through a book. How do you make tiramisu? How do you make baklava? And baklava is not an easy task, especially when you have to start from scratch and make phyllo. And I could not do it.
So you got to go find one of the grandmas.
Yes, I failed. But needless to say, that was my first influence of baklava. My other one was in Italy, and I had a pomegranate. Things that were like that back when I was growing up. Those items were not in our grocery store. Today, they're everywhere. But that was I remember going to Trieste, Italy, and I go into this store, and they've got this octopus that's just sitting on the counter, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And you know, growing up in Western Pennsylvania, you don't see a lot of octopus.
Was it like in a big lump?
It was cooked.
I see.
It was cooked, and all they had was lemon juice on it. And I said, I'll have a piece of octopus. They took it off. It wasn't refrigerated. They took it off of the counter, threw it on a butcher block, cut off 2 of the tentacles, and served it to me. And that's it. And threw maybe a squeeze of lemon juice on it and a little dash of salt, and said, go for it. It was unbelievable. And I was just like, this is great. What the hell is this? And so my influence from the military, or at least from the ports of call that I went to, definitely had an influence of my culinary exploration for the company, as well as for just myself. You know, when I got hired here, Brooks Brothers, he's my boss, and he's the one that hired me. And he was really looking for someone that could talk to the chefs, someone that understood food, someone that here we are at Eaton Park. And Eaton Park is a cookie cutter. This is what we do. These are the items that we purchase. That's it. All of a sudden, this Parkhurst division comes along, and they've got chefs asking for kumquats and nasturtiums and all these other funky things. And they're like, we don't know what this is. What is this person asking for? So I was that conduit of that communication between supply chain, or purchasing. At that time, it was called the purchasing department, and the chefs. So I was that tie. What do we need to have on the order guide? What makes the best sense? So a lot of what, I helped grow the company of what we should be using for our specifications of products, and making sure that supply chain supported that. Because the support was there, but it was rigid. It was like, why do you need to have that? Why don't you just use the same chicken as what we use at Eaton Park? Because you only buy chicken breast. I need a chicken thigh. Just feed them chicken. You had that type of, not philosophy, but you had that type of banter that went back and forth between a chef and a supply chain person. The supply chain person says, we've got chicken. Why do you need to have a different chicken? Well, because I need to make a different product than a chicken breast sandwich.
There's a whole chicken there.
Right. I need thighs. I need this. So it started to become. So there was a need for me to come in, and that's when I got hired as the manager of purchasing, to really walk them through what our chefs need to have to be able to execute the menus that we're putting out there to our guests within our colleges. It's different than what we were doing at Eaton Park, and they recognize that, and that's why I got hired.
That's great. So I imagine that the family feel and culture of Parkhurst and, you know, the wanting to support and also the local food movement probably contributed to the local focus.
Well, the local focus came into play shortly after I got hired, when we needed to figure out a way. You know, we're getting these proposals and we're submitting these proposals for universities to do their food service, and there was a thing about supporting local. We don't know what this is. What are we going to do?
So it was driven by the youth.
It was was driven by the RFP, the request for proposal for college food service.
Yeah.
Actually, it was not college food service that we actually, probably a little bit of both. It was college, and we were doing retirement communities. And the retirement communities had a little bit of a thing in there around local as well. Hey, we've got this community garden that we need to support. How is Cura, that was the name of the company that we had under our company. It's no longer part of Eaton Park Hospitality Group. But Cura Hospitality was part of Parkhurst, or part of Eaton Park Hospitality Group, and they had a series of retirement communities. And those retirement communities had a demand for local. And they were pushing us. So they were pushing us. Our colleges were pushing us. So it just made sense to really put some attention towards the program and put a definition to it. We defined what our farm source program was back in 2002. We held true to that definition. You know, when we started, it was 150 miles, and we were lucky to get 10% of our food locally. And then slowly we adjusted our definition to the footprint of the company, and recognizing that, you know, the guy that's making bread here in Pittsburgh isn't distributing that bread to Maine. It's never going to happen. But I might buy a beef jerky that might come out of Portland, Maine, that might come into Pittsburgh, which is not right now, that's not the case. But there is a potential for that, and that would still fall under our Know Your Source program. Even though I'm in Pittsburgh and I bought a beef jerky out of Portland, Maine, that is still coming from a family and independently owned company, but they may be a little bit further away than at 100 Mile. I still say within our confines of our Know Your Source program, I would say a high percentage, and when I say high, probably in the 80 to 90 percentile of our products are still within a 100-mile radius of that locale.
Yeah, and I think knowing the person and, like you said, the family-owned business is really important, and so I think that's qualification enough to be part of your distribution plan or
Yes.
your sourcing plan.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
it's part of it's a pillar. It's part of the program. You got to be family and independently owned. I mean, I go through our usage reports on a pretty regular basis of what we buy. We've got a pretty robust database that we're able to do this in. You know, I ain't doing this all in my head. You know, and what happens over the course of the years is a lot of acquisitions. When that company that we might be buying from was family and independently owned, and now they're a part of a larger corporation, they unfortunately go away. You know, a good example is Klosterman Baking. Klosterman Baking is out of Cincinnati. They were family and independently owned as of 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, and now they're owned by an outside firm, and they are no longer fall under our program. So, you know, when we start to look at this, we're always keeping I always have to be looking at our purchases, because I don't want to be held. I don't want to lie to our guests that this is part of our program when I told you they're family and independently owned and they just got acquired last week. I might miss that, but all in all, I'm pretty much on top of what we're doing to make sure that we're true to what we say that we're doing in the Know Your Source program.
It's a really great philosophy, and I totally appreciate it, and I love Parkhurst Eaton Park for that reason. When I met you and I was in food studies, and everybody was like, this is the dream job. Why haven't they hired more people to help you?
I don't know.
And why isn't your type of job like more prevalent? It's been 15 years since the food studies program started, and since I was aware of you and your job here.
There isn't a lot of, we'll put it this way, as we continue to grow, the way that we have always looked at this office is it's a scalable, anything that I do has to be scalable. I'm a one-person show. I mean, I can only be in one place at one time. So everything that I think about and how I look to execute, I have to think of it as, I can't be there for you. What tools can I provide to you via, a toolkit, or, a way that we can, hey, you want to do a local food dinner? I don't need to be involved with your local food dinner. This is what you need to do. Here's all the assets. Here's all the marketing assets. Here's all the different things that you need. Run, go. Figure out your farms. You've got a database that you can search. They can search their farms. They can find out who they're buying from. I don't need to do that for them. So everything that I'm trying to accomplish within as we grow is to make sure that the information that I have at my fingertips is also available to every one of our operators. Do they know how to access it? Probably not, but I can teach them. So a lot of my role right now is giving an operator the tools that they need to be able to do their job, as well as showing them, just holding their hand a little bit. And I could do that over Zoom. As we build into, the execution of more of the marketing, I work it's a weird role that I'm in. I'm a connector to supply chain. So I find a product and I say, hey, I got this great product and I need all these potatoes stocked at all these points of distribution. I send that over to supply chain. It happens. Boom, done. Now I need to figure out a way that all those potatoes that just got stocked, I better find a way that we're going to market this. So now I connect in marketing. And then I say, okay, I've got these 12 locations that are buying from the same potato source. I need some marketing material that goes about these potatoes. And I need something about these apples. Now I need something here. So my marketing department, our supply chain department, all work on scalable systems. I'm not going to do this for one location. I'm doing it for 12. I'm doing it for 8 over here. So now it makes it a chunkable program. And it makes it a little bit easier to execute. Now, do I need help? Yes. Analytics is probably where I don't have a strong hold on. And it just has a lot to do with, there's just a lot of information. And extracting that information and getting it from the end user has been something that I have not been very good at. But there's a story there. If you pull that information, there's a story. How much food waste do we have in our colleges? I don't have a finger on that pulse. I can probably give a pretty good educated guess because I've done enough weigh the waste events, but I still think it would be very difficult for me to give that number.
And is that on the universities to do the disposal, or is that on you guys?
That's usually on the university.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know Chatham did composting.
They still want to know.
Yeah.
Chatham wanted to know how much waste. Well, talk to your hauler. I'm not connected to that hauler. Yeah.
So what does marketing for potatoes look like?
I don't know. I'm building it now. It might be, everything that we do, there's always a social media asset. There's always an asset that's going to go as a sign. There might be a digital signage that we might have on a menu board that might be digital. So our marketing is, that's not me. I give that to our marketing department. Let them run with it. But I think it's consistent with everything that we're going to end up doing, probably within those 3 areas: social, digital within the dining hall, or within the dining area, and then probably hard copy signage.
So it is it's like saying we have local potatoes?
It might say local potatoes. I'd love to be able to have one sign where I can have a marketing person within the university put the name of the potato farm that's on there. So it might be a scalable, it might be really scalable that is one sign. Hey, all of our potatoes, apples, and tofu are all local. Every day we're going to have these throughout the whole entire school year. You could guarantee you that these potatoes and blah, blah, blah. So.
Okay, well, I didn't know what, because, I think of marketing as, marketing to the public, but you're marketing to people who are already a captive audience within your facilities.
Yes.
So that's why I'm not really understanding what that would actually look like, but a sign.
Well,
okay,
in a college, you might have the local grower that might come to campus, and we might do a social media post that, hey, meet Farmer Joe. He's in our dining hall, and he's the one that grows our potatoes. It might be that simple.
Go talk to him.
Yeah, go talk to him about the potatoes.
Is there any products that you have a hard time sourcing that you'd like to get local that You just haven't been able to nail it down.
I think that's a hard question. I'd like to see something around a chicken. Chicken in Western Pennsylvania. I mean, chicken I can buy from, like Purdue is someone that we purchase from, and Purdue's out of Delaware. They do a very good job. They've got a very heightened focus on animal welfare, but they're not our tried and true chicken supplier. And not that they shouldn't be. It's just that we've got a lot of chicken. We buy a lot of chicken. I mean, it's not as easy as saying we're going to turn a switch and we want all of our chicken to come from Purdue. It just doesn't work that way.
Chicken it's so hard because there's not a lot there in a chicken, and people eat a lot of chicken.
Chicken is our number one,
and it's just
spend.
so much death. So I had a guy call me when I worked for the city, and we put out the new urban ag code regulations, and he was like, well, I want to raise chickens and I want to have a barbecue joint. And I was like, so okay, let's walk through this. So how much do you need to sell in a week? And he was just like, I don't know, maybe blah blah blah. And I was like, well, let's say that's about 25 birds. That means every week you have to kill and clean 25 birds. Because he's like, can I slaughter them at my house? And I'm like, yeah, you go on with your bad stuff, just don't tell anybody about it. And so then 25 birds.
What you're allowed in the state of Pennsylvania. Chickens. You can slaughter on site 30,000 chickens.
Well, in the city, they didn't want to know about it. Just don't talk about it.
You shouldn't be slaughtering chickens.
So when we broke it down, and I was like, and they take about 6 weeks before they're ready. So you got to get these chickens, and then every week or day you need to get new chicks. Yeah. And then every week, so let's say 25 a week, you have to kill 25 chickens and process them, and then the next week you have to.
You're not even talking about
kill
mortality
them
rates.
Again. And yeah, I mean it's a lot of death when it comes right down to it. If you're gonna have a barbecue business and you want to raise your own chickens, you got to be able to deal with that. And the guy was like, oh, okay, I'll call you back, and never heard from him again. I think he just wanted to sort of challenge the rules, and I'm like, yeah, let's play this out.
Yeah, man. Let's see if we can do it. Yeah, it's just it's there's a lot of we do a lot of colleges that have their own farm. They have their own garden. They're trying to grow their own food. And, there's this misperception that, everything's fine coming from the farm because it's grown on the college campus. And I'm like, well, are we sure that everything's done right?
Do you test
are we
the soil?
asking the questions? That example is that, well, we've been growing food for a long time. What could we be doing wrong? Well, I said, I don't know. There's a program called Good Agricultural Practices, and the Produce Alliance can come out and inspect you to make sure that you're following good agricultural practices. It's funny, but there's a lot of colleges that are learning as we walk onto a college campus, and they say, we'll buy everything that you have, but you got to do this. We're fine with that. We'd love to be able to support the local agriculture, certainly the local farm that's on campus. But there's a perception that they just think that it's going to happen, or that we've been passed. I mean, I remember at one, we're like, well, the chef's going to come out and farm, right? Why is the chef going to farm? The chef's got to cook. He's not going to be in the garden. What the hell is up with that?
That was the thing with the restaurant that you guys had in downtown, Six Pen.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was like, I heard when it first opened that the chef was also doing the gardening up there.
Oh, yeah.
It was true?
Oh, yeah.
How did that happen? How did that work?
It was a challenge. I mean, you don't find many chefs that want to do that. You don't find that many. That was Chris Jackson. He was from Richmond, Virginia, and we hired him to open up Six Pen, and he wanted to have a garden on the rooftop, and we worked with him on getting a garden up there and doing the things that we wanted to ultimately have grown up there. And that model is really cool, but when reality comes in and real life starts to hit you and call-offs start to happen, and the age of after COVID, and I say after COVID because now there's a level of, I guess, a lot of people think that if I don't want to work today, I'm not going to work, and I'm not going to show up, and I'm not going to call anyone. No shows.
Really?
Oh my God. Yes.
Is there an age of people that do this?
I would not know that age. I think it just sort of overlapped to everyone. I just think that there's an entitlement piece that I'm not going to come to work today.
But also, there's a whole like crazy world happening out there.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah. But needless to say, I just think that model, as much as I'd love to be able to support it, I just think that chefs have way too many things that they're juggling that they can't rely on having a garden that they need to tend to. You know, we have a garden at the porch, both porch locations we got gardens, and when we have someone there to take care of the garden, it goes hog wild, it goes great, and it looks wonderful. When we don't, we struggle, and it is, you know, as much as I want to say that we're buying and using all of the ingredients from the garden, if no one's there to tend to it, no one's there to harvest it, it's probably not going to happen. So it's finding the right person that wants to execute that and holding on to them and making sure that they see value in some of the things that might be above and beyond. And that's an above and beyond. When you're starting to grow your own food and you're trying to develop your menu around what you're growing on that roof, that can be hard, and that also is just there's just another variable, and that variable is it going to grow? You know, did the basil grow? I got aphids now on my lettuces, and I've got, you know, my tomatoes got some sort of whatever. I mean, how do we start? Slugs,
oh my God.
Whatever. How are we dealing with that?
Birds, chipmunks, bunnies.
Oh, right. Well, I don't have birds. I have birds on the rooftop, but I'm not getting bunnies and I'm not getting chipmunks on the rooftop at the porch. But those are tough. We don't have a sole person who's responsible for the gardens at the porches. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we want to sustain and continue to do gardens at the porch, we're going to have to employ someone that is their responsibility is to oversee the garden. I think that, if that's part of the brand, which it has been, I think that to be sustainable and to really be fiscally responsible as well, to make sure that we're growing the things that they're ultimately going to end up using. It's foolish for us to grow tomatoes if you're never going to use them. It's foolish for us to grow all of your herbs if you're never going to buy and use those herbs. Mm-hmm. So it's more of, you got to put it into practice, and you got to have a committed individual that's going to be able to drive that. You can't drive that program. I can't drive that program from this office.
Yeah.
I can't. It's impossible. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
And anywhere where you're growing food and you're trying to, be also the folks that are preparing and cooking it, it's not the right mix. It doesn't work. I mean, I guess there's a few places in California that have been known to do it, and I'm sure there's other places that have been known to do it. But you got to have a committed individual. You have to have someone that is committed to not only the food that they're preparing, but also the food of how it's grown. And you don't find many people like that.
Yeah. Where did you find local tofu?
I don't have any local tofu in Western Pennsylvania.
I thought you said tofu. You were
tofu
saying...
is definitely something that I will have. I'll probably pull Cleveland tofu.
Okay.
I'm heading there tomorrow, 16th. I'll be there the 16th next week. And I think I got 8 of our chefs going, 8 of our managers going, so they're going as well.
Nice.
They'll come out of the Cleveland accounts. So we got John Carroll up there, and we've got American Greetings, and we've got Otterbein, and a few other colleges, Wittenberg. There'll be a few other colleges that will come into there. But it's really educating them that, hey, this is the tofu I want you to be using. This is a tofu that is generated and sourced and produced locally. Local to Cleveland to Marietta, Ohio, maybe a little bit of a stretch, but hey, at least we know where they came from. Versus you buying something that might be coming out of California or elsewhere. Let's support the local tofu maker.
Yeah.
So, it would be Cleveland tofu for our Cleveland and Cleveland area. In Indiana, Phoenix tofu out of Chicago. It's called Jenny's now. She just switched the name. And then Wisconsin, I've got Hieu, Hiewa. They're out of Bangor, Maine. And then the Philadelphia market. So everywhere we have tofu makers that are able to supply into distribution, maybe through our produce distributor, maybe through a food hub, or maybe even through a U.S. food service, if it made sense. So our goal is to look at those 3 ingredients and making sure that they're available to every one of our locations, and we're supporting the local.
I have so many more questions, but I don't want to keep you all day. So I'm just gonna ask. So what's next for you in this job, or just what's next for you, Jamie Moore?
Wow. I would have to say, if I focus on just looking at where we're at with Eaton Park Hospitality Group or Parkhurst, I think that there's areas that I really want to start to concentrate on to communicate outward to our guests of what we're doing. You know, I think that we do a lot of cool things, and there's a lot of really neat things that we've accomplished. But I don't think we tell our story. So I think telling our story is a big part of what I'm trying to focus on. I'm trying to get a little bit more active on social media, doing a little bit more posting about where our food's coming from and who I'm visiting. Like, I'm hoping that you'll see something from Cleveland Tofu on LinkedIn or from Instagram. I usually go both places. And it's more of my way of, one, elevating our food of where it's sourced and telling a little bit of the story. So, I'm trying to tag our Parkhurst dining page, that hopefully that can be reposted to other places. So that's sort of what I'm putting a little bit of attention towards. I haven't been really good on social media, and I recognize that. So it's an area that I'm trying to get better at. So my goal is twice a month I'm trying to do posts. I know that sounds like nothing, but in the grand scope of things, it's more than what I've ever really done. So from my end, that's an area that I'm trying to concentrate on, and really getting more of our operators involved in the food system. It's great that I'm there, but if I don't have a chef that's necessarily committed to the food system, then it's going to fail. I can bring them all the local people. If he's not going to buy from them, it's not going to help. So, really getting them to a farm or getting them to an operation like a tofu maker, there's something to be said about that, because then there's a commitment from that chef to that owner that they shook hands and they agreed that I'm going to buy your product. Well, damn it, you better buy the product.
Right.
And you see that happen. So I think that, that in-person interaction is really vitally important for a relationship to grow.
And you're helping to educate the chefs and the other folks within your organization. So that's...
Well, educate them about the sources of food or where they're buying it from. Mm-hmm. Hey, did you know your tofu that you've been buying is made right here in Cleveland? And go to it. Come on. I'm going to take you to the place. Show you how it's made. Did you know how tofu was made? And most people probably no, I have no idea.
I have to imagine, though, that since 2002, when you started this, till now, your job of educating chefs has gotten easier. Maybe more people are more aware of some of these things.
I would say it's become not necessarily easier. Easier because it's readily available. That's probably, when you say easy, I think that we've built the system to make it easy. Hey.
And whoever that person was in 2002 that integrated that into that RFP, that is a person that I want to meet and be like, yes, all it takes is for you to just put it out there.
I would have to say that is, there's some truth to that, because, we're in business to make money, right? And if they're asking for something and we don't have a response, we got to figure out that response. I was on a conference call the other day, and we were talking about sort of where our company stands. We've been going to these conferences, and it's part of the CIA, and it's World of Flavors is a CIA. The Culinary Institute of America puts out the World of Flavors. It's a conference that happens with chefs, and World of Flavors is sort of like, where is the next thing that's going to end up hitting the food system? What cuisine is going to be the up and coming, and a lot of it's around plant-based. A lot of it's around doing, and we call it inclusive dining. So inclusive dining for us is, if we have someone that is halal and they need to have a halal slaughtered chicken, we're going to make sure that we got you halal chicken. So inclusive dining is a big part of what we do. But one of the things that we notice when we go into these conferences, at least from the chefs that I spoke to, is that we're ahead of, I wouldn't say we're ahead of the curve, but we're doing the things that they're talking about that we should be thinking about. We're already doing it. Like they're saying, you need to start thinking of this. Well, we're already there. We're doing that. So
and it's just a natural progression of your evolution.
Focused
on
food,
local.
Well, not even on local. It's even on just the sheer fact of just the evolution of food. You know, or the cuisines that might be popular right now. You know, Latin cuisine or Mediterranean cuisine. You know, they all go in cycles. They all, you know, in 2020, this was the height was, you know, Korean chicken. You know, in 2022 it was whatever. You know, just there's a cycle of things. And it seems like we've got our systems in place that we're keeping up with the Joneses, and we're keeping up with the trends of the industry. And it's enlightening to hear when you talk to a chef that's new with our company and says, they said that we needed to be doing this. We're already doing it. I can't believe it. Like, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty cool to hear that from someone that hasn't been with the company for a long time, from a new chef's perspective, to say, hey, you know, the reason I came to Parkhurst Dining is because one, you give the chef a lot of freedom, and secondly, we're up on the trends of what's happening in the food service world. You know, and we recognize it, and we're always developing new brands around it. So it's neat. It's pretty cool. You know, buying local it's always at the top 5 things that you know, chefs should be concentrating on. It's been the top 5 for the last 20 years, maybe not 20, 15 years at least. So there's trends and there's things that are always there, but there's always one type of cuisine that usually elevates.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jamie, this has been great. Thank you so much for being on with Bowl and Spoon and for talking with me. And it was great to get to know you better.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was a wonderful time.
Everyone knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon. That spoon. Everyone knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon.
With Bowl and Spoon is written, produced and hosted by Shelley Danko Day. Original theme song was written and performed by Paul LeBreeze and friends. You can listen to With Bowl and Spoon wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review and share. Follow us and send us questions or messages on Facebook and Instagram at With Bowl and Spoon. Thanks for listening.